Ferrari is putting all its hopes on the huge Monza upgrades. Red Bull has accepted defeat in the Constructors' Championship, and F1 could introduce rookie sprint races. Do consider subscribing to the channel. Now let's get straight into the latest F1 news. With performance in mind, Ralf Schumacher branded the decision for Williams to give Franco Colapinto the nod as Logan Sargeant's replacement over Mick Schumacher absurd. Pressure had already been mounting on Logan Sargeant to retain his Williams seat, with three-time F1 race winner Carlos Sainz confirmed as his F1 2025 replacement. And the 2024 Dutch Grand Prix proved to be Sargeant's last, who has been shown the door mid-season by Williams. Sargeant crashed the upgraded Williams FW46 heavily during the final Dutch GP practice session, causing him to miss qualifying. With speculation soon gathering pace that Williams could decide to make a change, Red Bull reserve Liam Lawson and Mercedes reserve Mick Schumacher emerging as options. But while Williams did decide to replace Sargeant, the driver they chose to see out the F1 2024 campaign in his place was their junior Franco Colapinto, who makes the step up having been contesting his rookie Formula 2 campaign, which yielded a victory and 2 runner-up results. However, when it comes to performance, Ralf believes it is absurd for Williams to have gone with Colapinto over Mick. You can perhaps respect this decision because Colapinto is a driver from Williams' junior program. But from a performance point of view, I think it's absurd and doesn't make sense. Ralf is quoted by Sky Deutschland as having told the German press agency, "I think the risk for the racing team and the driver is much, much higher than if they had brought in someone with experience like Mick." It was during the 2021 and 2022 campaigns that Mick raced with Haas, but since being dropped by the team in favor of Nico Hülkenberg, he has been unable to find a way back onto the F1 grid, having since served as Mercedes reserve and linking up with Alpine's endurance racing program. And Ralf believes that his nephew is still paying the price for taking too long to shine against then Haas teammate Kevin Magnussen. "You have to be fair enough to admit that it simply took Mick too long in his second season at Haas to find his feet and get to grips with his teammate," said Ralf. Formula 1 is not forgiving. Colapinto made his Formula 1 debut with Williams in FP1 at the British Grand Prix, and in explaining the incredibly tough call to replace Sargeant mid-season, Williams team boss James Vowles said the team need to put themselves in the best position to pick up points across the last 9 rounds as he looks forward to seeing what Colapinto can produce. Williams has scored only 4 points so far in F1 2024, all of those registered by Alex Albon. To replace a driver mid-season is not a decision we have taken lightly, but we believe this gives Williams the best chance to compete for points over the remainder of the season, said Vowles. "We have just brought a large upgrade to the car and need to maximize every point-scoring opportunity in a remarkably tight midfield battle. We also believe in investing in our young drivers in the Williams Racing Driver Academy, and Franco is getting a fantastic opportunity to demonstrate what he is capable of across the final 9 rounds of the season. This is undoubtedly incredibly tough on Logan, who has given his all throughout his time with Williams, and we want to thank him for all his hard work and positive attitude. Logan remains a talented driver, and we will support him to continue his racing career for the future. I know that Franco has great speed and huge potential, and we look forward to seeing what he can do in Formula 1. Mercedes technical director James Allison revealed that a one-stop was their plan for Lewis Hamilton at the Dutch Grand Prix, but a lockup forced them down an unplanned route. Hamilton went into the Dutch GP with major momentum, having won 2 of the last 3 races, claiming victory at Silverstone and Spa, but the Dutch GP at Zandvoort brought about a nasty surprise on qualifying day as Hamilton suffered a shock Q2 elimination. To make matters worse, he also picked up a 3-place grid drop for impeding Sergio Perez. Starting the race on the soft tire, Hamilton was able to make strong early progress into the top 10 before pitting for the hard tire on lap 24. Hamilton was in again on lap 49 for another set of softs, though Allison has revealed that this second stop was not part of the plan. Instead, Hamilton was due to go to the end on those hard tires, but a lockup would damage them and necessitated that extra pit stop, a strategy which was not competitive compared to what they originally had planned. Hamilton pitted and returned to the race P8, the position where he would finish, 1 spot behind teammate George Russell. Asked as part of Mercedes' Dutch GP debrief whether a soft-medium-soft strategy would have been better for Hamilton than hards for that middle stint, Allison replied, "Possibly, although the hard looked like an okay tire, probably the best tire that race." And the real question is, would a one-stop have been better than a two-stop? And if you're going to do a one-stop, then starting where Lewis started, soft was an okay choice for the first stint because we managed to make a few places there. And then it's hard to the finish. That was the strategic choice. And hard was definitely the right tire to pick to go from there to the end of the race. However, we had to abandon that strategy to go to soft, hard, soft because Lewis had a lockup which then damaged the tire, which then took away the pace of the car. And then we're on a recovery strategy at that point, having to make it into a two-stop. And soft was our best option for completing the race. But soft, hard, soft, soft, medium, soft, neither is competitive compared with soft, hard, which was our intended strategy. And the second stop was only really a function of trying to recover from that lockup, because the pace he had on the hard tire prior to the lockup was very competitive. Once he got himself free of all those back markers, the car was running quite well and he would have been doing good. Hamilton and Mercedes will look to bounce back this weekend at Monza, a venue where Hamilton holds the joint record for most wins alongside Michael Schumacher with 5. Red Bull have given up on beating McLaren to the Constructors' Championship, with Robert Dornbos declaring they aren't even worried about it, as it's obvious that will happen. Red Bull may have started the season as the team to beat with 4 wins in 5 races, but since Lando Norris's Miami triumph in McLaren's upgraded MCL38, it's the Woking team who has scored the most points. Bagging 308 to Red Bull's 239, McLaren have closed the gap to just 30 points with 9 races remaining, as they've capitalized on not only their own on-track improvements, but also Sergio Perez's troubles. While McLaren have been able to rely on both drivers scoring podiums and even wins, Perez has left Max Verstappen to carry Red Bull alone, with even team boss Christian Horner admitting before summer break that they're running on one leg. Former F1 driver Dornbos is impressed with McLaren's turnaround, which saw Norris set a 2024 record for the biggest winning margin when he beat Verstappen by 22.8 in Zandvoort. I thought he was just really cool. It's new for him too. It's only his second Grand Prix win. He acted like it was his 32nd, the Dutchman told Ziggo's crashin' into Kukin. He only won in Miami this year, and now. The first race of the season was won by Max Verstappen. He was 45 seconds ahead of Lando Norris then, and now Norris finishes 23 seconds ahead of Verstappen. So things can turn that fast. It has Dornbos claiming Red Bull have all but given up on retaining the Constructors' title for a 3rd season, but they can thank McLaren's team orders in Hungary that Norris isn't closer to Verstappen in the drivers' standings. The McLaren is now a monster of a car, he added. They really need to worry at Red Bull. If they hadn't changed McLaren driver swap in Hungary, the difference would only have been 63 points. There are 9 more Grand Prix, as well as 3 more sprint races in the United States, Brazil, and Qatar. In the Constructors, we just know McLaren will be champion, that's just obvious. I don't think Red Bull even has any fears anymore about whether this is going to happen or not. They have given up on that. Norris's victory in Zandvoort may have been only his 2nd this season, but Dornbos believes such is McLaren's advantage he could add another 8 before the season is over, and then the drivers' standings may look a lot different. They still have the lead in both championships. Very honestly, as a neutral viewer, it's very cool when Abu Dhabi gets closer, and then we have another championship. 9 races Norris is not going to win, but 8 maybe, he said. As for Norris, the McLaren driver insists he's always been in the championship fight. It's not something new in his mindset. I've been fighting for the championship since the first race of the year, he told the media, including PlanetF1.com. There's no sudden decision of now. I need to do better. I've been working hard the whole year and I'm still 70 points behind Max. So it's pretty stupid to think of anything at the minute. I just take one race at a time and just keep doing what I'm doing now because there's no point to think ahead and think of the rest. I don't care about it at the minute. I'm just, focused on one race at a time, so it's not a question that I need to get asked every single weekend. Leclerc finished on the podium at the Dutch GP, a result that surpassed Ferrari's pre-race expectations. However, this pleasant surprise did little to prevent Lando Norris from claiming victory in a commanding fashion. Fred Vasseur still believes Ferrari can fight for the championship, but the team's hopes depend on their next update package. Ferrari are a team whose mid-season development is often a topic of scrutiny. In many ways, the Maranello-based team have lived up to their reputation this season. In a massive blow to their title hopes, the upgrades Ferrari brought to Spain were counterproductive. Although the updates to the SF24 successfully generated more downforce, they unintentionally generated bouncing and aerodynamic instability. The Scuderia were forced to dedicate the last few months to mitigating this issue. As evidenced by their result in Zandvoort, there is still a competitive foundation to build upon. Still, the squad's main frustration is that a miscalculation has blocked their short-term progress. To compensate for this, the upgrades arriving this weekend in Monza must be effective. Ultimately, the Italian GP will provide plenty of insight into Ferrari's chances in 2024. As it stands, they are still capable of putting pressure on Red Bull and McLaren in the standings. The question is whether Vasseur's team has understood why their development stalled. Even Red Bull, who seemingly understood these regulations better than anyone else, are struggling to reverse their downward trajectory. It is only McLaren, excluding the early rounds, who have delivered consistently race-winning pace. Charles Leclerc confirmed after the Dutch GP that upgrades are imminent at Ferrari. His comments about the updates were marked by a textbook brand of controlled optimism, as expected from a driver trying to manage expectations. The data from the wind tunnel looks promising, though, at least according to Fred Vasseur. The Ferrari team principal believes there is performance waiting to be unlocked. Not only is this relevant for the upcoming 9 rounds, but also for the 2025 car, which Vasseur insists is progressing well. Because of the incoming 2026 regulations, teams will dedicate very few resources to next season's development. For Ferrari, this means any upgrades over the coming months will also affect performance in 12 months' time. Understandably, the factory in Maranello is eager to see the first indications from the updated SF24. The Dutch GP was a difficult race for Red Bull to stomach, as Lando Norris secured victory in commanding fashion. Max Verstappen put in a brilliant drive to finish second, but the RB20's limitations are clear. Christian Horner is aware that Red Bull have been outdeveloped by McLaren, and he believes one area is critical. There is no denying that McLaren are the fastest team on the grid. This fact was somewhat masked prior to the summer break, partly because Mercedes became competitive enough to snatch a few wins away from the British outfit. However, when Andrea Stella's team avoid unforced errors, the MCL38 is extremely difficult to beat. Upgrades brought to the Dutch GP have increased the Woking squad's gap to Red Bull, who have yet to find an answer to the MCL38's rapid development. Speaking to the media in Zandvoort, Christian Horner discussed where he thinks Red Bull are losing the most time. "I think the front wing is a key area where others have found some performance. I think that the way the front wings are being used are quite different. If you look at the front wing angle of McLaren and Mercedes, they're very, very different. Very different to the rest of the grid. McLaren are setting the benchmark now. That's clear in terms of pace. They've been that the last couple of races. Over the last year, McLaren have comprehensively won the development race against Red Bull. Not only have they overturned last year's deficit, but their performance advantage is significant. To make matters worse for the defending champions, more updates are in the pipeline for McLaren. Considering the Papaya team's trajectory in 2024 so far, there is no reason to suggest they will slow down. Meanwhile, Red Bull are struggling to add speed to the RB20. Max Verstappen was using older specifications last weekend in Zandvoort, such is the extent of the team's dilemma. Improvements are becoming increasingly difficult to come by, particularly given that a large part of Red Bull's development budget went to the largely ineffective Hungary update package. Moving forward, the Austrian squad faces an uphill battle in both championships. Ironically, their best hope could be a Ferrari resurgence. Should the Scuderia's Monza updates prove effective, they could become a major headache for McLaren, potentially limiting their progress. Having said that, this hypothetical is little more than wishful thinking. If Red Bull cannot respond to the Woking-based team's upgrade program, the rest of 2024 could be difficult. The traditional postseason Abu Dhabi running could be heading for a major shakeup with a sprint race for rookies under consideration. Over recent years, there has been a conscious effort to create more opportunities for rookie drivers to get their foot in the Formula One door, which has become increasingly harder to achieve. With initiatives like mandating a rookie is run by each team in 2 FP1 sessions during a season. But a more radical plan has been put on the table. Once the checkered flag falls on a Formula One season in Abu Dhabi, a young driver's test takes place during the following week, with a driver that has fewer than 2 Grand Prix of experience in one car, while tire testing duties with next season in mind are carried out by one of the team's current drivers in the second car. However, ahead of September's F1 Commission meeting, Teams have been asked to consider the viability of holding a sprint race for rookie drivers during that Abu Dhabi postseason period, F1 President Stefano Domenicali confirming that the idea would then be discussed in detail at the F1 Commission meeting. He spoke highly of the plan, which would provide rookie drivers with important competitive experience as they search for their F1 breakthrough. There is a project on the table, namely the possibility of organizing a sprint race for young drivers in Abu Dhabi, he told Motorsport.com. We are reflecting on how to give young people the opportunity during the Yas Marina test to shine and gain experience, not only by driving in the test, but also in a competitive context. It would certainly help their training, aimed at making them prepared for the next step. We will talk about it in detail by the end of September to understand the feasibility of this idea. Such an idea would carry hints of the proposal which ex-F1 team boss Eddie Jordan recently put forward for the standard sprint format used at selected rounds in an F1 season, as part of which he called for rookie drivers to become the focus. The F1 sprint format expanded to feature at 6 rounds on the calendar for the first time in F1 2024. Winning a sprint race is not winning a Grand Prix. They are not even close in my book, Jordan said on the Formula for Success podcast. One is playful, carry on getting a few points, and the other is a hardcore Grand Prix where you have to prepare and do things differently. I think sprint race needs to be called to question. I think it's not providing what it should have provided or what they set out to provide, and I have a solution perhaps to rookie drivers and sprint races. I think sprint racing is a failure. It's shambolic. It shouldn't be in the weekend for the Grand Prix. It's distracting. It's taking us away from what we're really there to do, to see who wins the Grand Prix. So now, rather than lose it, I would propose having 4 Grand Prix, which are 4 of the races that are key in our calendar. So you talk about Spa, Silverstone, Monza, and then a choice of somewhere else. Let's put it into Monaco. So for me, when you have tennis and you have a Grand Slam, these would be for me the Grand Slam events. And what I would like to propose does happen, so as it doesn't need extra cars, it doesn't need extra parts, that a sprint race, which can be shorter, because really, all you want to do is see the start of the race and see how people qualify. So you give them a chance to get the feel, soak up the atmosphere of the Saturday, and we have a sprint race at 4 events a year, and no driver can enter that race if they've completed in over 10 Grand Prix. So it gives some of those guys who are unlucky, that got squeezed out, some of the guys who are on the way up, and it gives them a chance. You can make it they have to do 5 Grand Prix, 10 Grand Prix, it doesn't matter what that figure is. But I'm just saying you can't have it open-ended and anyone who's a bit of a star and is just on the cusp and looking for a drive come there. But anyway, that's my proposal. My proposal is that we pick 4 races, get rid of sprint racing, and make these sprint races into 4 of them per year in the circuits that have been loyal to Formula 1 for the longest time. And I think that's a way of repaying it. And I do believe this. It needs to be doctored. I'm not saying that's the full, complete package, but that's my view of how I think this could be handled. That's it for today's video. I'll see you in the next one.